MSNBC host Nicole Wallace claiming Ohio Senator J.D. Vance was mansplaining when calling out the moderators for fact-checking him during the vice presidential debate. Debate moderator Margaret Brennan was fact-checking him on immigration, specifically in Springfield, Ohio. That's when Vance jumped in right there, and he says he was going to say what's actually going on there.
The moderators fact-checked Vance a number of times throughout the debate while Walz was virtually unchecked. Comes after CBS News originally said they weren't going to fact check and instead let the candidates do it themselves. Wanted to talk about it with our friends from Newsbusters. Tim Graham is the executive editor and Curtis Houck is the managing editor. Welcome, gentlemen, and thanks so much for coming on. As the only female on the screen right now, I wanted to say my own thoughts. I definitely did not think J.D. Vance was mansplaining in the moment. In fact, he was really enlightening the public who might have been tuning in to talk about the process of immigration and why we are seeing so many numbers of illegal border crossings right now through the CBP One app. But we'll give it to Tim. What did you see in that moment? Was it an example of mansplaining in your eyes?
No, and to many Republicans and conservatives, that was the time in the debate where everybody said, we need to stop having these debates on liberal networks where they tell you what they think as liberal moderators and then shut your mic off when you complain that what they said wasn't accurate or that it needed context. I mean, in this particular case, he was trying to say to her, yes, the migrants in Springfield, Ohio were legal because the Biden administration had all granted them, he said, waved a wand and said they were all legal over the CBP One app. So it was a legitimate point for him to make, and they didn't want him to make it. And they kept telling him, out of time, you're out of time, we've got more important things to do. And that's why it was not a fair debate.
Yeah, Senator Vance was pointing out again how the legal process worked, to which she responded, the moderator responded, thank you for explaining how the legal system works. But again, the legal system that Tim was getting to is the TPS, the temporary protected status that those in that area enjoy, and that was given by the Biden-Harris administration. Again, Trump has his own thoughts about that and what he may or may not do to those that do have TPS, temporary protected status. Curtis, I want to get back to the debate point, though. Despite moderators going after Vance in that moment, the media is still struggling to explain Minnesota Governor Tim Walz's poor performance. Watch.
I think the reason that Tim Walz was effective in the way he did it, he wasn't angry, he was disappointed. And that's actually in some ways stronger.
I think he had too much preparation.
Maybe.
Yeah. He had so many lines that he was clearly trying to say that he didn't listen.
On every issue on substance, J.D. Vance was very polished and very slick, and Tim Walz beat him on all the substantive points. At least that was my take on it.
Curtis, there was that very awkward moment that we all could both could respond if you'd like, but moment where the moderators, claimed that Governor Walz was not in China when he said he was in China, asked him to explain that, then followed up with it, and it was some roundabout answer that no one really understood. Curtis, your thoughts on Walz's performance and media portraying that?
Yeah, Sean, you're exactly right. Yeah, he referred to himself as a knucklehead, which, I mean, if a Republican had said that in a debate, that would create days of news cycles and endless late-night monologues. It's interesting. This is what we often see at Newsbusters and the MRC when we're studying how liberals do after they lose an election, or their poll numbers are in the tank and they actually want to admit it. It's something like, oh, we're too prepared, we're too thorough, we're trying too hard, we're not doing a good enough job explaining how much we love you, instead of just admitting that you got beat. Okay, really. And the other thing that they're really kind of avoiding is how Tim Walz never actually said what he and Kamala Harris would do as president and vice president, whereas J.D. Vance, yes, talked about the failures of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and how Tim Walz's record in Minnesota isn't that great, but he also talked in the more positive, affirming aspect about what he and Donald Trump would do in a second Trump presidency. And that positive attitude is something that I don't think they were ready for. I definitely saw that on some of the networks right after, not MSNBC, but some of the other ones, where they were kind of caught flat-footed and they were stumbling over their words, trying to figure out what to say.